Hello and welcome everybody to Flicker Effect. It is Sunday, July 12th, 2020. This week, Hamilton, the film version, has finally come to Disney Plus. It's available over there as of last weekend. We haven't had a chance to talk about it, so we are going to talk about that tonight. What else? The Old Guard over on Netflix, Greyhound over on Apple TV Plus. And of course, we are going to have another top 5 list this week. This week, our top 5 80s action films. First, for those of you new to the show, we broadcast this show live every Sunday night over on YouTube. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/Flicker Effect. We, of course, invite you to like and subscribe by hitting the thumbs up and the subscribe buttons down below. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to be notified whenever we go live or post any other videos in the future. You can also find an audio-only version of this show via a podcast. You can find our podcast, Flicker Effect Podcast, on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, and basically wherever you listen to podcasts, just search for Flicker Effect. With that, I'm David Lott. Joining me, as always, is Bobby Jackson.
Hey, gang. Nice to see you again.
Jascha Wilson.
Hey, everybody.
And Michelle Hillard.
Hi, everyone. Hello.
Hello, guys. How's it going? There's a lot that's been watched this week, and we are going to try to get through as much of it as we can. But I feel like we have to play a little catch up since we didn't do a show last week and start things off by talking about Hamilton and that the film version of Hamilton that is now over on Disney Plus. I want to say first to everyone listening and to Jascha that we will not be talking about spoilers for Hamilton.
Thank you so much for that. I was actually about to try and interject. I'm like, please, let's just hear yay or nay, thumbs up, thumbs down, rave, whatever you want to do. Say it's great, it's amazing and whatnot.
Right.
But please, I have actively tried not to watch any of this movie because I'm supposed to see it live in October.
Yeah, no, we are not going to talk about spoilers. Just for anyone who hasn't seen it on stage yet, like yourself, who have not seen it on Disney Plus.
Yeah,
yet.
don't want to spoil that ending for you.
Yeah, we don't want to spoil that.
don't know what happens to that old Alexander Hamilton, so I don't want to spoil that for you.
Well,
I'm just saying.
Does he become a superhero or something? Like, what's happening right now? I'm confused.
We're not going to talk about details of the way it is portrayed in this show.
Right.
I'll put it that way.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So with that, it's on Disney Plus now. I have seen it. Michelle, you have seen it. We have both seen it on stage as well. Bobby, you had not seen it on stage before watching it on Disney Plus. So I have to go to you first. I'm curious, since you had never seen it before at all. What did you think of Hamilton?
So when I first actually had a chance to check it out, I initially listened to a couple songs first before I ever had a chance to see the play or see any aspects of it, just to get a sense of it. And I listened to like 2 or 3 songs from the beginning of the soundtrack, and I stopped because I was like, oh, the music sounds good. So from this point, I know I already want to see it. So I'm not going to go any further as far as listening to more of it and getting that experience first. I wanted to get all of it after having heard the songs. So I went into it already kind of knowing that I was going to like it. It was just a matter of actually seeing it. And of course, there's all this hype behind it. But for when I watched it that first time, I thoroughly enjoyed it and went on to watch it a couple more times after that. The first time I watched it straight through was just like as is. The second time I watched it, I actually turned on the subtitles so I could get a little bit more out of it, which really helped because it filled in some of those blanks as far as when you're hearing it, especially for the first time, some of it is going so fast and you're trying to process it all. So it's kind of hard. But when you turn on those subtitles and it fills in those blanks, you get to see and feel a little bit more. So I didn't have to look quite at the performance as much as I was looking at the words and seeing what it was saying. And then that third time, it kind of put it all together and watched it and caught some more things that I didn't catch the first time, as far as some things that may have been happening off stage to the side, or just some other stuff after reading more about certain things and what certain characters were doing at that time, on the stage presence of it. I think that all really helped as far as watching it a third time and putting it all together in that. And needless to say, I really enjoyed it each time, even more so because I was able to pull more out of it. So for me, going into it, the idea of, I think what was so impressive is seeing exactly what Lin-Manuel did as far as creating this, and just being able to pull all this out of his brain and put it together into a thoroughly enjoyable, cohesive show, I think is top notch and super impressive. I think the one thing that I didn't necessarily, I wouldn't say didn't come away raving about it, but that didn't impress me quite as much as everyone else, is the rapping aspect of it. Because to me, I guess, don't get me wrong, I like the rapping aspect in the show, but I think that for me, growing up on hip hop, that was nothing new to me. I've seen that before, and there's been plenty of hip hop rappers that have told stories through that form of art, through rap, like Slick Rick, like Scarface. There's like a lot of rappers that tell their story through hip hop. So I'm used to that aspect. So that wasn't the impressive part. It was just being able to put that together with the music and the stage and the performance, and while giving history, I think is all together just makes it so kind of special, and not something that it makes me understand why people saw it so many times and loved it so much, because it's special because of all the things that got put into the pot and mixed around. So that's kind of my long-winded review of Hamilton after having not seen it for so many years after hearing so much about it.
Well, since I feel like I'm next in line when it comes to my experience with Hamilton, Michelle, you've only seen it once on stage, but you had listened to the music a ton before you ever even saw it on stage.
Yeah.
As I've talked about here on the podcast before, on the show before, that before I saw it on stage, I had made a point not to listen to it at all. I won't rehash it too much, but part of me wishes I had, mainly for some of the reasons you mentioned, Bobby, why you watched some of the subtitles, watching it a second time, because there's a lot that's said in the show, a lot. I think Michelle and I, we saw one video that claimed that, based on the amount of words that are in this show, if you were to spread them out to kind of be at the same pace at most other Broadway shows, this show would be like 4 to 6 hours long or something like that.
Yeah, it said if it paced it out like a regular Broadway show, it would be closer to 5 hours long.
Right.
Like there's
a lot that's said in the show, and when I first saw it on stage, it was, I mean, I understood what was happening, but at the same time, I felt like I was missing a lot of the dialogue, especially being in the theater situation with, dealing with acoustics and the sound reinforcement of the theater. I don't know. So I wish I had listened to it. Ended up watching this a few days after it released on Disney Plus, and yeah, I enjoyed it a lot more watching it on Disney Plus. Actually, I haven't mentioned this to you, Michelle. I've actually seen it twice. I saw it again the next day. I was in a situation where I was able to just kind of do some stuff while I was watching it, but I put it on and watched it all the way through again the day after. I really, really enjoyed it. I think it's a gift that we have this experience, that we can see this version of the show, the original cast, shot incredibly well. It's my understanding it was shot over the course of 3 performances, 2 of them with an audience, 1 of them without, so they could get all those close-up shots that you see in the film version. And it's incredible. And the show is it's solid. And I have seen some of the reaction, like we speculated last episode, now that basically everybody with a Disney Plus subscription can now watch this. I was curious how many people there are going to be out there who had never seen it before that's going to go, oh, really? This is what everyone's been raving about? It's really not that good, everybody. And I've seen some of that. And what I'll say to that, since I kind of feel like I had somewhat of that kind of reaction after my first showing, I can see why the show has been so incredibly popular and people have wanted to see it over and over again, because unlike, I feel like, a lot of Broadway shows, and there's a lot of obviously great musicals out there, but this one is just so chock full, packed full of really good music from beginning to end. And yeah, the stage production I think is fantastic, but yeah, it's not like the big kind of shows with huge props and crazy things happening on stage. But it's just really good music all the way through for what, 2 hours, 40 minutes or something like that. And I think the more you see it, the more you listen to it, the more you want to hear it. And there's something about it. And it definitely worked for me seeing it a second time. I saw it a third time. I have listened to the soundtrack more since I've watched the film. And actually now I have decided I'm about 4 hours in so far on the audiobook version of the Hamilton book that this show is based on. It's a 35-hour audiobook, which will easily be the longest audiobook I will have ever listened to. But even that is fascinating so far. I'm only 4 hours in, and I was kind of worried I'd start it and be like, yeah, okay, this is just a bunch of history. It wouldn't be that interesting. But no, it's pretty fascinating, and I'll probably finish it and make my way all the way through it. So yeah, that's my long-winded version of my thoughts on the Hamilton film, which I can't recommend enough. And it was also, again, great seeing it in high def. Like, just it was great. Anyway, Michelle, what are your thoughts on the film?
I'll try to keep mine a little shorter. But yes, obviously, I've been listening to Hamilton since they released the album. So I don't even know how many years ago that was at this point. And I've loved listening to it, and I remember just dying to see it. And then we got the opportunity. I was able to get tickets, and David and I went and saw the Broadway Across America traveling production of it last February, and it was incredible. And I remember I was just completely swept up in it, because for me, I already knew the songs so well, so I was able to just sit back and watch the stage production itself, which was just that's what I was craving. That's what I was missing in my head. And I remember just being completely blown away by the choreography they did with it, and just the ideas and how they depict everything in the whole show. It's very imaginative. And there's, like David said, there's no major huge set pieces. The big set that they're on is really pretty simplistic, but what they do, it really ignites your imagination and puts you in the right place for the storyline. And it's not like they, invented the wheel on things. I'm kind of jokingly, they have a turntable for the stage. They're not the first ones to ever do that in a Broadway show, but their use of it is just spectacular. And it's one of those things that until you see it, you're just like, man, it's just so cool. But then Disney Plus is putting us out, and the last piece of the puzzle for me was getting to see the original Broadway cast actually perform this show. And the fact that they were able to bring the actor that now I can't think of that plays King George,
Jonathan Groff,
thank you. They were able to bring him in just to do the recordings of this. So that's something really special, that you get the original cast for this. And yeah, just to watch it again on screen. And I mean, like, I'm a little spoiled because I got to watch it on David's huge, awesome, 4 HD high def, all the bells and whistles and buttons on this TV has to offer. So visually, it was still just a complete feast for the eyes. And again, I got to see more things on the staging and just more creativity coming to life. And I just kept going, man, this show just hits on every level. I don't know. And then just to really see the actors' faces up close when they're performing some of their pieces that I've already known vocally that they excel at, to really see them perform it and to hear it and to watch them. I mean, they were killing me. They're so good. It just knocked me out, And so I will say, for me, being able to watch this at home, it is almost there's no price that could be put on it. It's spectacular, and I enjoyed the hell of it. I still cried in the same 3 places that I always cry at, and yeah, it gets you. It's good. So I'm sold. I'm glad that Disney decided, hey, we're gonna do this thing, and I'm all right with it. I'm happy they did, and I think it's a blessing that we have the opportunity for this in our homes at this point in time. And even saying that, you can still go online right now and you can pay a very, very tiny fee to watch Broadway shows of all kinds, musicals, traditional acting pieces of all kinds of Broadway things are online right now, and you can pay, and that money goes to those actors who right now have been out of work since into February in New York City and all over the country. And to be able to have art come alive in your home is something that I think is a wonderful and invaluable piece of our culture.
Well, that's Hamilton. Jascha, I think we danced around any details of the actual production, but
he's like,
you look skeptical.
I guess so.
I'm not. No comment. Like, I mean, you guys. I mean, I didn't hear much about what the story was about, but I still, want to go in. I'm trying to go in completely clean slate.
Oh, I totally get it.
Super get it.
Was that
if anybody would get it, you guys are the group that would get it.
If I was presented with the idea of getting the and not in Yasha's situation, a different situation, but if I had been presented the opportunity to go and watch the stage play live, or watch this on Disney Plus, I'm probably in the minority here, but I more than likely would have watched the Disney Plus version first before seeing it live, because in this current day and time, I've already heard so much about the play, and I think at this point, I just really wanted to see it with the original cast and seeing how they did it, and then to have that, especially if I'm not mistaken, the soundtrack is based off of their performance as well. Yeah. So I would have wanted to see them doing what I had initially heard, and being able to get that, and then go see whoever is doing it now doing it, because I just really wanted to see that original cast doing it. That's one thing I kind of thought about. But the other thing is that I really don't think from now until the end of time I'll ever hear the name Eliza without it being sung in my head, as opposed to just hearing the name. It's a weird thing now. I just associate it with it being sung. It's not a spoiler, but it's a person's name. So that's all I'll say.
Come on now.
There are certain
it's not a spoiler.
It's not a spoiler.
It's not a spoiler. There's certain catchphrases that I already use anyways. I think I've used it before, but I've always kind of, in my head, kind of like said things in the past few years, knowing the soundtrack. Like, I'll say things to David, and in my head, I'm like, and he hasn't noted. Now it's like I say things. Now it's like I say things that are Hamilton references, and he's like, "Oh, I get that." And he's like, "And now that song's in my head now." And I'm like, "Yeah, now you're welcome. It's for you."
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny now. Anyways,
so that's Hamilton, available now on Disney Plus for anyone who is interested and hasn't seen that yet. Next up, over on Netflix, new film, The Old Guard. Bobby and Jascha, you guys both watched this one.
Ooh.
Jascha, you haven't had a chance to talk yet since we've been talking about Hamilton. Why don't you start us off? What did you think of The Old Guard?
Loved it. I really enjoyed this movie. I almost started watching it again today. That's how much I enjoyed it. First off, I like Charlize Theron. I think she's a badass. But the character development for all of these characters that are surrounding her, a little bit, some of it is kind of predictable in the sense of where you think that this is going to go and what it's going to be. And it didn't disappoint. Yeah, it did. You can still kind of predict it, but she is such a badass, and the history of the characters and their mission and their goal and what they're about. Like, I am so excited and high hopes that they continue this movie as a franchise. It was such a fun story, and she is such a badass in the movie, like a legitimate bona fide badass. I mean, the trailer makes it look like she's a badass, and when you watch the movie, it doesn't disappoint. Like, I mean, I'm not going to get into details just because of spoiler aspect of it and whatnot, but I thoroughly enjoyed this film, and I know that I'll probably watch it again sometime throughout the week, if not all at one sitting, but definitely by pieces. So I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Bobby, your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I'm right there with you. I really enjoyed it a lot, and it's just I think that whenever Charlize is attached to something, you know, she gives her all to it, and really in this role as being also as an executive producer for this, and the fact that it's based off a comic book series from Greg Rucka, I already knew that there was going to be a lot of pedigree to it from the start that made it something worth watching, and like Jascha said, there's elements to it that are predictable and story things that happen that you may have seen before. But I just think that with where this being the place where you can kind of lay the groundwork for something else in the future, I think it's a really good, solid footwork that they've done here, especially with the character building. That there's this idea and this concept of people who are immortal, but if you've been around for so long, you might just get tired of just doing what you've been doing. And so to explore that aspect, I think is interesting. And the only real criticism I have for it is that as a person that when you watch a movie like this, you've seen certain aspects of the movie tropes that seem to happen. And it happens in this movie as well when you have someone that's new to this game, so to speak. They always do stupid things, and they're always questioning things that you wish that they would just go along with it because people know better than you, and you just kind of get frustrated with that from a storytelling standpoint. But I guess if it was the reality of it, that might be a real situation. But you see it so much in movies that you're just like, shut up and just go along with the program. But aside from that, I think that it's done really well, and it's choreographed really well with the action. And far as being a franchise, I'm hopeful that they do more because there's definitely the material there for more.
Yeah, as like Bobby said, like the character development, and like we were just talking, it's just like there's definitely aspects of the movie that you can see and you're like, this is very predictable, and you can see where it's going. I think personally speaking on my own behalf, and maybe this is kind of how you feel too, Bobby, it's just like you understand where the character's coming, is like why this is why that and whatnot, but I'm just more like, let's get through that faster because I want to see where this is going to go. And it's like we don't necessarily need to have this dialogue and this resistance from you of like being a part of this group. Just follow along, or let's just fucking move on to the rest of the story. But yeah, that's where I think I fall in line with that, what you're saying. But I absolutely enjoyed the hell out of this film enough that I can watch it again within a week and still enjoy the hell out of it.
Nice.
All right. Well, that's the old guard over on Netflix. Moving on quickly to a new Tom Hanks film that is available now on Apple TV Plus. That is Greyhound, a World War II film that's available over there now. This was set for a theatrical release. I think it was originally set for one toward the beginning of June. Of course, it got pushed back because of COVID-19. My understanding is Sony then eventually decided to sell the distribution rights, and Apple TV swooped in and picked that up. And now it is available digitally to stream right now if you're a subscriber to that service. It's based on I believe a 1955 book, and this film, the screenplay is actually adapted by Tom Hanks. He wrote it. He didn't direct it. I forget who the director is. I don't have that in front of me. But I watched this a couple days ago, and I'll start with you, Michelle. What did you think of it?
Well, I kind of was thinking I wasn't going to enjoy it as much as I did. I mean, I'm not like in love with it, but I did enjoy this. I like the storyline, and I felt like the pacing was actually really good. If anything, I was kind of surprised that the movie clocked in under 2 hours long. That is super rare right now. Like, but no,
Especially for a war movie.
yeah, I know, for a war movie, a World War II movie at that. Those anymore now, they're epic things. No, I, I think Tom is at his best when he is acting. His screenwriting it's okay. It's not like it's bad. There's definitely I think when it came to some of the dialogue things, I'd bump a little bit, kind of like, okay. But overall, I think the storyline itself is really fascinating, and the pacing of the movie is really good. It doesn't like just jump you right into it, but I will say, really quick, you were in the midst of some action, and no, I was pretty impressed with it on a whole, though. I think the production value is pretty good. Some of the CGI gets a little too CGI, if you know what I mean. They went, oh yeah, we're Sony, we've got money, let's do it. And there's things I'm like, you guys probably could have thrown down some money on actual effects. And I think that might have actually played a little bit better towards the film's likability for me. But no, overall, I thought it was really enjoyable, and it was kind of refreshing to have a new movie with a decent production value held to it right now. I'm really happy with it, and I think Tom in it is spectacular, and yeah, I don't dislike this film at all, and I actually kind of want to watch it again relatively soon.
I'd say that's a pretty good endorsement. Wanting to watch it again pretty soon. Yeah, I have to agree. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I didn't really know what to expect. I never watched a trailer for this before I watched it. I'd never seen anything other than the ads for it popping up on my Apple TV app, since I use that app so much, and it was seeing they were definitely pushing before it was even released that it was coming, being a Tom Hanks movie that they were releasing for the first time. It had never had a theatrical release, so I get that. And I didn't really know what to expect going into it. And I noticed the same thing when I started the movie, and I could see the runtime before we even started it. And I was like, oh, it's an hour and 30 minutes for a war film? Like this.
It's unheard of.
This is going to be interesting. And I think the time, the length is perfect. Because yes, it doesn't jump right in, but you get going pretty quickly, and it never stops. And the pacing is incredibly good. This is an example of a really well managed hour and 30 minutes. Like, it didn't need to be any longer. I think a lot of directors or studios might push for a movie like this to be longer, and it was just the right length. And yeah, dialogue wise, maybe there's not a lot of great dialogue, and the acting is what it is. I hate to say that it doesn't have to be great acting. That's not probably the best way to put it, but it's mostly this kind of film is mostly just about putting you kind of in the experience of what it would really be like to be on the ship. And I think the movie does a really effective job at doing that. It seems like it really goes out of its way for those of us who have no naval experience, and I think there are a lot of us out there, of course, to get a sense of how every person on this ship has a job, and that job, no matter what it is, matters. Like every person has some particular thing they are to be doing, and it all fits in perfectly together on a well-oiled machine like this ship in this movie. And I really like that about this movie, that it kind of made you respect why every sailor that's on a ship like this is there. And, sure, times now are different, but I really, really enjoyed the film. I was surprised. Again, considering this was a movie that I had never watched a trailer for, kind of didn't know what I was getting into. There was that part of me that was like, oh, they decided to just go ahead and release it digitally. They didn't hold out for a theatrical release. That probably doesn't, bode well for this. That definitely was on my mind when I was going into it. So maybe my expectations were a little low, but I really, really liked it. I highly recommend this movie. So that's my thoughts on Greyhound over on Apple TV Plus.
No, I totally agree. That was basically my takeaway from it. If anything, I think I'm happier that it was just released digitally and not released in theaters. I don't think this would have done well in theaters at all. I don't think people would have known what to make of it in a way. And at this point, we're at home. We've watched all of Netflix. We've gone through the whole catalog, and people are
Right.
looking for new things, and that's when they'd go, "Yeah, let's check this out." You know, so I think it's probably getting more play now than it probably would have actually in the theater.
Yeah, I don't know. As I was watching it, there was a part of me because I haven't read the actual quotes, but it's my understanding Tom Hanks is definitely not very happy that this film did not get a theatrical release.
Oh, really?
And as I watched it, I kind of understand why. I actually think this movie would have, I don't know how it would have done financially in the theaters. I'm not speaking to that, but visually, I wish I could have seen it in the theater.
Yeah, I can see that.
And as for the visual effects, I mean, yeah, it's obvious that a lot of these visual effects are not practical, but at the same time, I found that they were done pretty well. Maybe if anything, because, you know, watching this in 4K Dolby Vision, it looked great, but at the same time, I guess for a World War II film, a lot of movies like this are definitely, I feel like, given a specific kind of grain to them, and this movie does not have that. It has a very
Yeah,
polished kind of look to it.
that's what I think was having issues with sometimes.
So in one sense, it looked very nice on screen. Like it was pretty to look at, but I felt like, I think just because I'm so used to, oh, this is a dated, you know, time period, it should have somewhat of a kind of dated look to it, but it doesn't at all. It looks very clean. So anyway, other than that, yeah, I kind of wish I had seen it in a movie theater. I haven't read Tom Hanks's quotes. I don't know what he said, but I can kind of see where his disappointment probably is coming from.
Well, and for him, so much is invested.
Right.
It's a Playtone film, so this is his production company. So for him, this is, of course, he wants it in the theaters.
Yeah,
It's, you know, for him to lose that sucks, but at the same time, like, it's just kind of where we're at right now.
right.
Anyways,
Well, I am curious though, why Sony decided to then put it to sale for streaming service.
Yeah.
If there was the possibility that they didn't not think that they could make any money in the theater, or I mean, at the very least, you would think for award season that could have been a good play if you both really thought it was pretty well done. So it's just kind of curious why they didn't just push it.
I don't know. I mean, when it comes to award season, I will say I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. Do I imagine it would garner any awards at the Golden Globes or the Oscars? I don't think so. But though I really liked it. I don't know.
yeah, I agree.
That's one thing that I was wondering too when they did announce that they were going to just put it up there for streaming. I was like, it made me wonder like what's wrong with this film and why
Right.
did they just decide not to hold off on it? Like this was supposed to be a summer movie anyways, so why not just postpone it or hold it off for another year? Like I'm confused as to it's like Bobby said, it's just like it's something that I thought about too. Is like what was the deciding factor behind that?
Right. And that reminds me, and I'm not going to dig into this, but just quickly, I will say there was one film that I did see this week for the most part. My kids watched Artemis Fowl, and
Oh, yeah.
I watched most of it. I didn't see every frame, but I will say from what I saw, speaking of movies that ended up getting a digital release instead of theatrical release, and that maybe not being a good sign, yeah, that movie, from what I was seeing, was not very good. There was something about it. It was almost hard to pinpoint that I was not liking about that film. So not a fan of Artemis Fowl.
I think
Yeah,
it,
my
a lot.
cousin tried to watch it.
I was just gonna say, I
Sorry,
think
go ahead.
I agree with what Bobby said in his review of it. It just seemed rushed from beginning to end, and it just kind of seemed like a mess. They just tried to do too much into such a compact thing, and
Right.
I again, is one of those things I'd be curious to read the books and actually see some of these things drawn out and actually get more background on things. But yeah, that movie was just kind of a hot mess,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So it's a good thing it just went to Disney Plus. But having said that, like, I think your daughter kind of liked it. That she thought it was kind of cool. 'Cause it has
Yeah.
like fairies and effects and things and colorful stuff.
It struck me as one of those movies that I could see kids enjoying it.
Yeah.
And then it makes me wonder how it will be received years in the future when those kids are then older. And will Artemis Fowl be looked at like some of the movies we probably look at now that our parents are like, oh, this is terrible. I don't know. Jascha, you were going to say something really quick.
No, I mean, not much to add, but my cousin watched it and he said kind of like the same thing. I think that Bobby said. It was like it was okay, convoluted, kind of all over the place, and it felt rushed. And it was just
Yeah.
kind of cheesy. And I'm like, wow, that it's like I've watched the trailer, I've seen it on Disney Plus, and I literally had the cursor right over it, and I'm like, yeah, I'd rather watch something else. Like
Right.
I'm not gonna subjugate myself to this just yet. I'm not that bored yet.
Yeah.
Right.
I think like when it comes to David's kids, they've seen so much right now because they're at home so much and it's summer in Florida, so that, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. stretch of the day, you can't really throw them outside or they'll just, melt. So they've seen a lot of content in the last few weeks slash months. And so now it's like, oh, something new. Let's just throw it on. I don't even care if it might not even
Right.
be good. Like just anything new that's refreshing that we haven't watched umpteen times would be great.
Right.
And they're I think the kids are kind of in the same boat too. I think they're kind of like something new. Yeah, I don't even care. Like they just are like, yeah, new things. Let's just do new things. So,
Right.
anyways,
So Bobby and Yasha, you guys have watched some other stuff, and I do want to hear your thoughts. I know we're going to have to kind of skim over them fairly quickly. I apologize for that. But Bobby, I'll start with you. I guess quickly, some other things that you saw this week, or the past couple weeks, really.
Yeah, I'll try and go as quick as I can with some of these. One of the things that we had talked about through our text message thread was uh, Batman vs Superman Ultimate Edition. I had never watched that, so I got a chance to watch that. And as you said, it does fill out the story a lot more. And particularly, I think Clark Kent slash Superman gets a little bit more play into some of the areas of which that story seemed to fall apart at. Really, it fleshes out Batman stuff pretty well just within the theatrical release, but I always felt like Clark Kent Superman got the short shrift in the movie, and this does a little bit more to give him a little bit other things to do and give you a little bit more of an understanding of why he's going after Batman as well. And then you get some more of the nightmare scenes. And so it does do a better job of filling out the first two acts. And as you said, the third act is still what it is and the mess that it is. But there's more things there that you can appreciate as far as a complete story that's being told. And I'm glad I got a chance to watch it. I will say it didn't super change my opinion of the movie overall. I do think it was done in a way that makes it make more sense. But the problem I still had with it are still the problems I had with it even after watching it. So it didn't really affect those aspects of what I had an issue with. It just clarified more things. And I think that was better from a story point. But some things from a character point, I think, is a lot of things I had issues with, and that still carried over. But ultimately, yeah, I am glad I did get a chance to watch it. Let's see. I thought maybe Yasha was going to say something. I thought he
Oh.
watched it too.
Oh,
But
Oh, did
well, I
you
can
watch?
chime in on that too. Yeah, I actually watched the same thing. I did watch the Ultimate Edition of Batman versus Superman. Yeah, I mean, there's really not much that I can add to that. I mean, it still has some issues with the film. I enjoyed it. Like, I didn't think that it really added too much to it. I do think that you get a little bit more Clark play to develop his kind of disdain towards Batman a little bit more. But in all honesty, I still felt like I was watching the same movie, and it was just, some of the scenes were a little bit longer cuts. But I didn't find anything too spectacularly special about the movie. But I did watch it, and it was fine, and I enjoyed it. Like as much as I did, I think the first time around it was fine. It was solid.
nice.
okay, so moving on. I had a chance to watch. I didn't talk about it at the time when we mentioned new stuff that we had been watching before a few weeks ago, but a new series debuted on HBO/HBO Max, which is Perry Mason, played by Matthew Rhys, I think, and it's produced by Robert Downey Jr. And if anyone's ever watched the old show where he was a lawyer, this isn't that. This is kind of a prequel to that. In this, he's a detective, and he's working on a case that was a ransom gone bad. And it really plays like a slow boil kind of detective story that you're seeing him work on. And really, when you see who he is as a person back then, but prior to him being a lawyer, he's kind of not like a good guy in a lot of respects. And so you see that he must have come to some sort of moment in which it changes and shifts his perspective. But as far as we're concerned and within this story, he's not there yet. He's still kind of a ne'er-do-well in a lot of ways, and trying to learn who did this thing that happened as far as this ransom of this young child. And yeah, I'm liking it so far. It's only, I'd say, maybe 4 episodes in. And again, it's a slow boil, so it may not be for everyone, but so far I'm into it. And that's on HBO Max. Another thing I got a chance to watch was a movie I hadn't seen before when it came out. And so I decided to watch it now that it's on Netflix, which is The Town with Ben Affleck, Jeremy Renner, Blake Lively's in it. Solid. I love heist movies, and I thought this was really well done and directed by Ben Affleck. I forgot about that part until I saw it towards the end. And it doesn't do anything specifically special or new in that genre of heist films or anything, but it's just a well-told story. And I think that the standout for me in there, aside from, I think that Ben and Jeremy are doing good things in there, but honestly, I thought with the little bit of time that she had, Blake Lively really had that role down in terms of being this kind of downtrodden, down and out mother that was also a girlfriend to Ben Affleck's character. And yeah, I think she did a lot with that little bit of part that she had. But solid movie, and I'm sure most people out there have already seen it, but I was just playing catch up, so that was another one I saw. David, I saw you shaking your head. It looks like you agreed with something that I was saying there, but
no, I mean, that, I think that's a solid movie. I haven't watched that movie in a long time. I saw it on your list that you're going to talk about it, and I'm like, is he talking about like The Town, but Ben Affleck The Town? Like he's never seen The Town.
Like, is there a new town?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you never know. There's so much content right now. Like maybe there's a
Right.
TV version of The Town I don't even know
Right.
about. That's on Hulu. I have no idea. No, I'm glad you saw it because I think that's a solid movie.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. I like those type of movies, and it definitely is a solid one.
Okay.
Another one I saw, which was
I was going to say,
What's
you
that?
really want to flip out. You should read the facts on IMDb. Like Ben Affleck took a lot of like actual bank robberies from the Boston area and put that into the movie. So if you want
Okay.
to just kind of
I
geek
will
out a
look at
little
that
bit.
when we.
it's really fun to read.
I'll look at that when we finish today's show. What else? Okay, The Beach House, which is this movie that's on Shudder. If you have the Shudder app, it's a horror film where this young couple goes to a place where the young guy who's there, his dad is away, so they go to this beach house to get away, and a contagion from the sea, kind of overnight, starts to infect this town, and all the people around them become basically like zombies, but not quite in that same sort of zombie way. But it's they have to try and get out of this situation, basically. Nothing special there. It's okay. I wasn't mad after I watched it. I thought it was entertaining enough. It's a little bit slow, but overall, I thought it's all right. What else? Eurovision. Got a chance to watch that. Jascha, real
Oh.
quick, how long did you say you made it into this movie before you had to turn it off?
Oh, I think I made it in about maybe 40, 45 minutes. Like I keep going back to maybe finish it, but it's just something I don't know if I'm ever going to do. Like I just couldn't bring myself to do it.
So, okay, I watched the whole thing, and I gotta say, I ended up liking it. And I think maybe most of that came into the fact that I had no expectations going into it. I think what really I liked about it was the story. I felt the humor was hit or miss, though there were maybe 2 or 3 times I had a good belly laugh out of certain jokes. Ultimately, I think that it's one of those things where your mileage may vary because it's Will Ferrell and he's been hit or miss lately with certain things. And I think that what really made me latch on to this one was the story between Rachel McAdams' character and Will Ferrell's character and this contest. And I really wanted to see where it all went. And I think Rachel McAdams is doing a great job in terms of her performance and being this chick that's like this second banana to Will Ferrell, but really is more than that. And I think she played that really well. And I just had a good time with it. I'm surprised I did, but I did enjoy it.
Cool.
All right, maybe I'll go back and finish it.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you might finish it and say, no, I don't know what Bobby's talking about. That was trash. But you won't know until you finish it. But
doesn't happen often,
yeah,
but
so,
that could happen.
Exactly, it could happen. Another one I got a chance to watch was Palm Springs, which is on Hulu. And this was a movie that got a lot of buzz last year. And all I'll say about it, because I don't want to spoil it really, is that it involves a time loop. So it's kind of like Groundhog's Day. And it's got Andy Samberg in it and Kristen Milioti. And I will say one of the standout performances in there for me was J.K. Simmons. He looks like he's really having a good time in the role. But yeah, I won't say much more than that. It's a time loop story. So if you like those kind of stories in that genre, go for it, because I did enjoy it.
I've seen some good promotion for that one, so I've been curious about it. So that's good to hear.
I want to see that one as well.
I think you'll like it. If you like that genre of movies, I think you'll enjoy it for sure.
Cool.
And is that it? Is that my list? I think that's my list.
I think that is.
Oh
your
no,
list.
one more. I got one more. There's a show on Netflix called The Floor is Lava.
That's right.
Oh yeah.
And it's just a silly show where people are in this makeshift house where it's filled up with this red liquid that makes it look like lava, and your object is to get from one end to the other without falling into the lava. And it is what it is. I think it's mostly silly stuff. It's nothing particularly great about it and grandiose. I think if you like those type of game shows where people fall flat on their face and you get humor out of that, you'll enjoy it, because that happens a lot in this. And I did laugh a few times when that happened. So yeah, I think that's about all that one is for me. It was just mindless entertainment for a couple episodes. I didn't watch the whole thing. I just watched a couple to get a sample size of it, but that's pretty much it.
I feel like that show is perfect for families with kids that are in grade school, and the kids are just kind of like tired of everything, and you're at the end of the day and you're just like, we're just gonna put on 1 or 2 episodes of this, guys, and then we're gonna go to bed, and we'll have a few laughs, and the day's over, And I feel like that's kind of what this is. Right. And the kids will have a great laugh of it, and the parents just like, as long as you're entertained, I'm cool with it at this point.
Right.
I mean, it's not bad. It's just one of those kind of shows that's what I think it's kind of geared towards.
It's totally that, and it can even be just background while you're doing something else.
Yeah.
And one interesting thought or fact about it is that it was filmed inside of the old IKEA store that used to be in Burbank before they built the new one. So they just filled those IKEA rooms up with water and did the thing.
Serious?
So it's like, yeah.
Okay, now I'm kind of curious just to visually see that.
Yeah.
My takeaway is, there's a new IKEA in Burbank since I lived there.
Oh, there we
go. yeah, there's a super huge IKEA now.
Nice.
That's funny. So,
Jascha, you had some things quickly you wanted to go over real quick?
Yeah, no, I'll talk about it. I too have watched The Floor is Lava. It is remarkably corny. I think I made it through 2 episodes. I don't know how many episodes you made it through, Bobby, but I was having a hard time keeping going with it. Yeah, it was like 2 episodes. It's very silly. It's almost like a watered down modern day Double Dare almost type of adventure with all the obstacle courses and whatnot. It was okay. It was very, very silly. But anyways, I digress. Let's dive in here, shall we? So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is I actually watched and took the time to explore The Warrior Nun. That is a Netflix show that just was released. You can go ahead and skip that show because it is trash. It is not great. It It is very, very poorly done. With saying that, the acting is fine, but the story, I think, is what really got me to the point where I was like, I can't keep watching this. I feel like it's just not going to get better. But the
Right.
banter between some of the characters is fine. So it's not the talent, it's the story. Anyway, so there's that. And the next thing that I watched is Buffaloed. It is a movie, I think, released on Hulu, set in a world of debt collecting. Follows basically a homegrown hustler, Peg Doll, who does anything to escape or tries to do anything to escape Buffalo, New York. And it stars Zoe Dutch and Jai Courtney and Judy Greer. This was a very, very fun movie. Zoe is fantastic in this film. It's very funny. It's kind of quirky, and also it's kind of like in the realm of that these movies that they do where they kind of show the underlining truths of, like, mortgage rates and the Fox scandal and everything like that, where people break the the fourth wall, and that's kind of what this movie was. And they talk about debt collecting, and it's really kind of a corrupt system, but she gets kind of sucked into that world, and they just talk about it. But it's about her adventures, and she was just fantastic in this movie, fantastic in this character. Actually, probably watchable for a second time if I really think about it, but I definitely enjoyed that movie. That's Buffalo. One of the things that I've been sucked into that I've kind of cracked out on, and I've almost finished all the way up to this current series. I am watching F is for Family, which is an animated animated series on Netflix, featuring the talents of Bill Burr and quite a few other famous actors. But Bill Burr is clearly what drew me. Well, that is what drew me into watching this. Very, very dark humor, but very, very, very funny. If you like Bill Burr's humor, there's really no reason why you wouldn't watch this or like this show. But what's even crazier is that I heard and read that it's loosely based on his childhood, which is just, when you watch this, it's all kinds of fucked up. Like, I'm sorry, it is. Michelle, I've been dying to talk to you about the next thing that I've been watching, because I think you've watched it and you're totally into it. I have watched about 6 or 7 episodes of The Great.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yes,
I've
yes,
been trying to
sir.
get through it. Definitely cracked out on that show. It is brilliant. Love it. Can't wait to finish the series. Nicholas Hoult is genius. He
Yeah.
is such a horrible person in the movie. This
So
show.
horrible.
And it is basically about the Russian Empire, and I love this kind of stuff, and especially when they make it quirky but dark, and that's exactly what this is. And I'm all hopped up on it. I can't wait to finish it. I'm watching it pretty regularly.
They officially just said that there will be a season 2. It's going to be happening. I know. It's so
That is awesome.
it's like a tongue-in-cheek dark comedy thing, and I love it. And I'm not surprised that I love it, because it's the same people that did The Favorite, that film that came out, I think 2 years now.
Yeah.
That David and I both loved. And yeah, I know. And
It's about a year and a half anyway, but something like that. Yeah.
yeah, I guess this Christmas will be like 2 years, right?
I
This
think so.
December. Okay.
Anyway.
So anyways, no, like I love that film, and I love that kind of humor and that kind of dark stance on things. And this is just kind of more of that with a historical twist to it. It's basically, it is exactly what happened with Catherine the Great. And it's a story that not many people know about. And to see her perspective in a humorous light, it's good. It's just, the writing is really good. The acting is really good. Nicholas Hoult plays a horrible, despicable human being. And he does it really well. And with a smile on his face the whole time. So no, it's a very good show.
Yeah. He is so good. He is so good in this show. I'm just like, it just get lost watching them all act. They're all so fantastic. They're so good. And the dark humor that they portray in this film is just, or this series is just so good. Like, hearing that they're going to have a second season, I'm like super excited to hear that. So I'm definitely going to finish this and probably dive into that as soon as that comes out.
Yep.
And the last thing that I'm going to talk about that I have watched, or started to watch, I should say, I have not finished it, is Desperados. It is a Netflix movie, I think, that just came out this past week as well. So far, it's pretty predictable, but there are some really good laughs that are coming from this, from watching it. I'm not expecting much, but I like Lamorne Morris. I like the woman that's playing opposite of him. I don't remember, but they had she has a very different, Nassim Pedrad, I think is her name, and Lamorne Morris. My first encounter with both of them was from The New Girl, and they're in this movie, and I think they just have really good chemistry together, and I probably think that they're very, very tight and close friends, which is one of the reasons why they probably did this movie together. But it's a fun movie. It's fine. The banter back and forth and everything is over the top. It's silly, and there's some parts that are just really have gotten me a good laugh. So I'll finish that movie, and that's what I've been watching.
Cool.
Very nice.
You know, real quick before you jump back, I want to ask this to Michelle and you too, David, but mostly Michelle and Jascha. Since you've seen The Great and you've gotten a good, I guess, sample size of Nicholas Holt's acting ability between this and what was the other movie we just talked about that he was in?
The Favorite.
That was, yes, The Favorite.
Yeah.
There was a lot of rumors that said that before it ended up getting cast for the Batman, it was between Robert Pattinson and Nicholas Hoult. Do you think that Nicholas Hoult could have played Batman if that was the case?
You know, it's
Bruce Wayne
interesting.
Batman?
I remember when this whole, like, who's going to get cast for it was kind of going down, and I remember his name being pulled for it, and I don't think that it comes down to, like, acting chops. If it's more or less kind of a visual thing. I don't know if he's, and I think he's actually, he's kind of one of those people that's kind of an odd looker, but he's kind of attractive in his oddities. And, but I don't know if, for me, he's not Bruce Wayne. He's not Batman. And I say that, and it's kind of hard to imagine Robert Pattinson, but I can kind of see it in this detective way. Like, Nicholas, who is very good at wearing many hats, this way that Bruce Wayne is depicted as a detective in this mannerism, I think it was cast correctly with Robert, actually, in my opinion. And I don't think it's really skill. It's more a look, a believability to me.
See, respectfully, I'm going to disagree. I think Nicholas Hoult would probably be a better choice for the Batman movie with this, just based on his talent and his acting ability. And also, I see kind of like almost like a young Michael Keaton in this guy, like around his eyes and, you know, kind of like his, you know, stare and whatnot, just kind of like the pointy eyebrows type of situation. So I don't know. Like, I think he could have probably done it off like for somebody that's kind of coming into his own. You know, he's obviously he's in really, really good shape. You know, they can make him be this whole like coming to age type of character in Batman. And I think he would have done a good job with that, especially with how much he plays into the aspect of being like he could play the grown man child type of role and then drop into being a dark and forbidding character, because he does that in The Great. Like, there's times when it's like he's very playful, and then all of a sudden you see him just switch, and that switch is not a good look, because he is just horribly, he tortures people. Like, he just tortures people
Right.
with what he wants. So that's my opinion.
I wonder what David thinks, actually.
Oh.
He's the
Smiling.
Batman guy, so, you know.
I think he would be a good pick. If I had to pick one or the other, I'm still good with the Robert Pattinson pick over Nicholas Hoult. But if Nicholas Hoult had gotten it, I guess I only say Robert Pattinson over him because kind of the things like you touched on, Michelle. I think I just visually see him in that role better, more easily. But at the same time, Nicholas Hoult is such a good actor that I know we'd see our first still image of him as Bruce Wayne and then him in the suit, and I'd be like, okay, yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
But right off the bat, Robert Pattinson is an easier self buy for me. Like that works for me a little more. But Nicholas Holt's such a good actor that he could do it too. It's almost 50-50. But
Yeah.
if I have to pick one or the other, I think I would have gone with Robert Pattinson anyway.
I almost could see Nicholas playing like a young Joker.
I could see that.
Anyways.
Anyways. So
this show is going long, but we've got other cool things.
That's what we do best.
We're so good at it.
Everyone likes to hang out with us here on YouTube. You guys just sit back, relax.
All the things.
You know, we're going to talk about all the things in the 80s from here on out. It is time for our top 5 lists. And this week, Jascha, you had the honor of choosing our list of the week. And with that, I'm just going to hand it over to you, and you can tell everybody what we're going to be counting down this week.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so what we're doing today is we're going to be counting down your top 5 over-the-top action movies or creations of a genre or whatever. Well, no, more like action, like one person versus like the world type of situation. Like one person taking on an entire army or entire group or entire situation, but they are clearly the hero, and this is where we're going. We're going from here to point A to point B, and nobody's getting in the way. Because you can't stop this motherfucker because they are that badass and they will mow through everybody. And it just does not matter what the situation is. So that's what we're doing. We're counting down the top 5 resilient, over-the-top action movies of the 80s, in our opinion.
Gotcha.
All right. Well, with that, Jascha, you picked the list. That means going down this list of the 4 of us here. Michelle, you're going to start us off
next
with your number 5. 80s action
My
film.
number 5. So I'll admit I have not seen that many over the top like 80s action films, but I've seen a ridiculous amount of 80s action films in my time. So my list might be a little bit more subdued than others, I guess. But for me, just make sure I'm looking at my notes real quick. My number 5, I know I'm so old. My number 5 is actually Escape from New York. And that was released in 1981, and it's got the incomparable Kurt Russell in it, and it's pretty outrageous to think that this film came out in 81, and it's supposed to be taking place in New York City in 1997, and think about that, 1997 was just so far away in the future, that Manhattan itself has become an entire prison, and the whole premise is that he has to go and save the president to get a pardon for his crimes that he committed, quote unquote. And it's basically him versus all of the prisoners in New York City to get the president out. And it's just a big hot mess from beginning to end, with random ways that Snake has to, get out of. And I don't know, it's a classic for me. I wouldn't say that I've watched this movie a multitude of times, but in the 5 to 7 times I've seen this movie, I still enjoy it. It's still silly, but I like it a lot, and I have a good time watching it. So yeah, for me, it's Escape from New York.
All right, Escape from New York, you were number 5. That moves things over to me. I'm pulling a Jascha this week. I'm kind of winging it. I have a list of 6 movies here that I kind of have narrowed down to. So obviously one of these is getting the boot. But I'm kind of just picking the order as we go. I've got my number 5, though. This is a movie that I think perfectly fits your description, Jascha, of not just an 80s action movie, but kind of the over-top central action character. And this genre is good for me too, because I grew up watching religiously Arnold Schwarzenegger films. And I always feel like I'm the perfect example of why violence in movies doesn't have to have an effect on a kid, because I watched some pretty violent stuff as a child, and I'm about as
You're like the most passive person I've ever met, ever.
My parents did a good job, I guess, of instilling in me this is not real. Do not be a bloody, violent person, because I watched some pretty crazy stuff and stuff like this. My number 5 is The Running Man.
Oh, it's a good one. Dang it.
Good one.
Son of a monkeys. That's a good one.
Man.
There's some over-the-top violence in there.
There is.
Ridiculous violence.
And this is
unnecessary.
This is a Schwarzenegger film that I feel like doesn't get enough recognition. I feel like it's kind of buried under his catalog of films, and I would imagine there's a lot of people now that have never even heard of The Running Man. I think it came out in '87. And it
sounds about right.
It centers around a guy who's been falsely accused of something, and in this dystopian future, which, by the way, I think in this movie is like 2017 to 2019 or something like that. Basically, criminals like this are then thrown into this like show where they're like hunted by these hunters that kill them, like all these wrestling stars and shit. And the movie's crazy, and I remember really, really enjoying this as a kid because not only was it crazy action, but it was also in the future. I loved movies like this that were set in the future, and the
80s future.
Yeah, the 80s future. It was fantastic, and it makes me want to watch this because it's been a really long time since I've seen this movie. But if I watch it, it'll be like just like it was yesterday. I saw this movie a lot, and I don't know what that says about me, but The Running Man, that's my number 5.
That was a good one. Damn it.
That's a good one, dude.
That's a good one.
Bravo.
Bobby, you're number 5.
Yeah. My number 5 is going to be, I don't think that any of us will be able to do this list without running into having someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger on the list, or in my case, his counterpart, Sylvester Stallone. And I could not put this movie on my list because it is very much over the top, especially if you see the progression of this series for him. And no, it's not Rambo. It's actually Rocky. In this case, it's Rocky 4. Not only does Rocky battle a Russian and take on all of Russia in the ring, even before that, we've got Apollo Creed and James Brown. I mean, it lavishes in the over the top. He has this big old concert just thinking he's going to dust off the Russian, and it just this big performance that's just so over the top with everything. And, of course, he gets killed. And then from there, Rocky does his whole training montage, and most of it becomes a if you don't know by now, oh well, sorry.
Right. These are movies from the 80s, so
yeah, you probably haven't seen Creed 2 also as well. Yeah, it's just you can't help but to know that that's a cheesy movie just because, especially where the pedigree came from. I mean, you go from the first Rocky movie that's Oscar nominated, then you go Rocky 2, and then you got Clubber Lang in 3, and then he's got all of Russia that he's taken on in 4, and it's absolutely over the top, but I love it. So that's my number 5.
Nice. All right. That means we're moving over to you, Jascha. You're number 5.
I'm going to actually start it off with a quote. This was a fun movie for me. This was, this was very, very 80s. I enjoyed the hell out of it. I'm going to say the quote, and I'm going to hope that you guys recognize it. It's just remember what old Jack Burton does when the earth quakes and the poison arrows fall from the sky and the pillars of heaven shake. Yeah, Jack Burton just looks that big old storm square in the eye and he says, "Give me your best shot, pal. I can take it." I'm talking about Big Trouble in Little China. I remember watching that movie when it was in the 80s when I was a kid. I don't even think I was 10 yet. It came out, I think, in 86. Yeah, so I was barely 9 when I first saw that movie, and it was everything. I watched it a lot. I remember when I saw that on one of the lists that I was looking it up, and I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely going up there. Kurt Russell at his finest, just taking on every foreign special effects, and just a fantastic supernatural movie directed by John Carpenter, the legend himself. And it was it's just a fun movie. So yeah, that was my number 5.
All right, moving on to 4s. Michelle, your number 4.
Well, Jascha, great minds think alike, because my number 4 is Big Trouble in Little China. I literally cannot count how many times I watched this movie when I was a kid. In China, yeah. Big Trouble in Little China.
In Little China.
Oh, God.
Said Little China.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking about how many times I saw this. We used to watch this movie over and over and over and over when I was a kid. My brothers and I loved this. It's interesting that I have two Kurt Russell films on my list. But yeah, no, this it is over the top. I mean, and it's definitely not I don't know. I don't even know how to put it. It's not very racially accurate in a many ways. But God, it's a good over the top 1980s action film, and there's just some of the effects are they're so 80s, but they're so good in that way. Yeah, no, this movie it's funny, it's silly and irreverent, and yeah, no, I mean, by today's standards, this movie would probably not fly at all in how we are as a society. But in 1980s, we pulled it off, and this movie is
Let's go
it's
for it.
spectacular. No, I recommend this one. Yeah, no, this one, it's a good one. Big Trouble in Little China.
Big Trouble in Little China. You're number 4. That brings us to me and my number 4, another 1987 film. It was a good year for 80s action films, I guess. And not only that, 80s action films that took place, I say in the future, and I'm trying to remember what kind of future this was, or if it even was.
I don't think it was. It's weird. I'm saying it as if
You're
I
saying
know
it
what
like
your
you
number
know
4
what
is.
I'm going to say.
Yeah, but I don't.
Well, I think I know what you're. I think I know what you're
so that's
talking
weird.
about. I think I know what you're
Weird.
talking
I thought I
about.
knew what you were gonna say.
Now I'm going to try to look it up really quick.
I
And
think I know what you're
see
talking about.
If indeed it takes place in another, or if it's just like
Okay, so this
I
is
don't think
1987,
that- it
a
is.
futuristic thing.
a futuristic
So
thing. Who's going to guess?
is this RoboCop?
This is
That's what I thought it
RoboCop.
was.
Yes!
Ah, yes, I knew it.
RoboCop! Oh my god, that was so over the top, gratuitous violence, and I
yeah.
saw that at such a young age.
Same here. I remember certain scenes of that movie going, even at my age at that time, going, I shouldn't be watching this.
I know, I thought that
I
too.
can't believe my parents let me watch this. This is insane.
I was like, my parents cleared this with the babysitter?
Right?
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
I remember seeing the second one in the theater, and I saw the first one at home, and I was like, there's no reason why I should be watching this movie. This movie is incredibly violent. This is,
Yeah, it's crazy violent. It's over the top. What's there to say about it? I ate it up, though, I guess, and I also watched this one a lot. So, yeah, RoboCop. That's
half man, half robot.
That's my number 4. Bobby, your number 4 action film.
You know, it's so funny because I knew, or at least I felt like I knew that's what you were going to say once you said 87, and then you were trying to contemplate of whether it was future or not. Because another one of his movies, and by him, I mean, Paul Verhoeven, I was thinking I wanted to put on my list, but it was actually too far past the 80s. It was Starship Troopers. I was like,
that movie's so good.
Because that definitely would have made my list.
We need a 90s action movie list because I already have that one made in my head.
That will come for sure. My number 4 is a movie that, man, I can't tell you. This is another one that kind of falls in that realm of I probably shouldn't have been watching this when I did watch it, just because of some of the scenes in it. But it's just so funny because a lot of people come at this movie a certain sort of way, and it's just so delicious in the way that it's violent, but it's just so ridiculous because of the concept of it. And my number 4 is with Patrick Swayze, and it's Roadhouse. And it's Patrick Swayze. What is he doing being a bouncer at this place and taking out a whole town of baddies? I mean, as they come after this place. And then he rips a guy's throat out at the end with his bare hands. I mean, you can't get much over the top than ripping someone's throat out with your own hands. So it's just a movie. I can't tell you how many times I've watched it. And, those scenes, I forget what his co-star's name is in that movie. But I remember that song that's playing, These Arms of Mine, I think. And I'm like, oh, should I be watching this? Because there's like a lot of nudity in that part. But that is just, I think that it's just so simple in its concept. and it's just done so well with the way that Patrick Swayze delivers that character of Dalton, and it's just that line that I always remember from it. We're nice until it's time to not be nice, and that's just always what I remember from that movie.
It's so funny that Patrick Swayze did that movie because he if I remember actually was a pacifist. Like he was very not a violent guy. Like he didn't it was such a weird character for him to play in general, for him to be like, you know what, I'll play this role. I got this. It was weird. But it's funny now. I'm so ruined by television. So now whenever I think about Roadhouse, all I think about is the Family Guy, that one episode where everything's about Roadhouse. Roadhouse. That's all I think about now. I don't even think about the movie. I think about the Family Guy's episode about Roadhouse. So messed up. Anyways.
Yeah, it's funny.
Jascha, your number 4.
All right. My number 4, I had to throw this person up there because it really launches an entire franchise and crushes it and basically revolutionized what the action hero is supposed to be. I'm talking about Ripley and Aliens coming strong, taking on all the baddies, because this time it's war, apparently, is the tagline for Aliens from 1986. Over the top, crazy action, ridiculous, and literally she's the one person that is able to take out these gigantic 6'7" to 7' monsters that are able to climb all over the place and kill at will, except for her. Yeah, I'm all about Aliens. The movie's badass. James Cameron does it again.
Good pick. Aliens, number 4. Michelle, you're taking us to number 3.
All right, now I'm getting in there. I'm getting into the heavy hitters here. Officially, this is a big one. This one ignited some of my worst childhood dreams, actually, my worst nightmares that I would have. And I saw this movie. Again, babysitter watched it, and I should not have watched this movie. But that is Predator. That movie messed me up hard. Like I did really okay with it up until a certain scene where people or bodies are hanging from trees, and then I had nightmares for the rest of, the next 10 years. Anyways, no, Predator is a really excellent action film, honestly. As sci-fi as it is, still a really great action film. Obviously, it has the one, the only Arnold Schwarzenegger in it, and he's amazing in his role. And yeah, it's him versus aliens, basically. These creatures that can literally just morph into invisibility and kill you in the absolute worst, horrific ways that your nightmares can not even comprehend. So yeah, for me, it's Predator for sure. Is an excellent 80s action film.
87. That was a good year.
It was a good year. 86 too, actually. I have a list. I wrote down a ton of movies and I wrote their years down. Yeah. 86 and 87 were solid.
Well, for my number 3, I had to go away from 87 finally. Going back to, I believe it's 1984. Ooh. I feel like we're playing a game now, if you can guess what I'm about to say. But my number 4
I got two.
Is Terminator.
Oh,
the Terminator.
Yep.
Yeah, it basically launched a career for James Cameron, right? And another Schwarzenegger film, another movie I shouldn't be watching. Though I don't think I saw this in '84. I forget when I finally first watched this. But anyway, it's the Terminator. It's fantastic. I really have not much to say about the Terminator. It's number 3.
There's not much to comment on because everyone has seen the Terminator, like everyone, and
Right.
everybody has seen T2, which again 90s, but yeah, no, everybody's seen Terminator. And it's funny. I was thinking about when I saw Predator, and Predator was also an 87, and I think I saw it in 89 or 90, but I was still a young buck, and that one messed me up. I'm trying to remember when I first saw Terminator. I'll have to think about that.
Yeah. All right, Bobby, you're number 3.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm looking at my list and I'm hearing your guys' list, and I think my list is really comprised of over the top stuff as opposed to just, you know, 80s action movies. Because definitely I would have put something like Aliens on my list or Terminator as well, just because of how much they stuck with me as a kid growing up. But I went real deep onto the over the top stuff because those movies for me, even though they're over the top, they stuck with me, and I didn't maybe think of them as being over the top at the time. They just were enjoyable movies. My number three firmly fits into the idea of being over the top because, I mean, just the concept alone of it really is that in and of itself. So my number three is Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon. And for anyone who's seen this movie,
Oh
they
my
know it's over the
God.
top. You've got Show
Oh
Enough.
my God.
Am I the meanest?
Show Enough.
Show Enough. You got
Who's
Am
the
I the
master?
baddest? Show Enough.
Isn't he
And then
Leroy?
you just got Bruce Leroy.
Oh, Bruce Leroy.
What's that?
Okay, because
Yeah,
he's trying to be
Bruce
Bruce
Leroy,
Lee,
Leroy
but
Green.
it's Bruce. Yep, Leroy Green. Oh God.
Yeah, and that's his antagonist. And the movie is like corny and cheesy in a lot of different aspects, but you kind of fall into the story. And really, one of the things that I fell in love with when I was a young kid watching this movie was Vanity. Yeah, she was supremely hot back then, and I just remember that at least after a while, not at the time, but you forget since this was Barry Gordy's movie, there's a lot of music in the movie.
There's a lot
And
of
a
music
lot
in
of it
that
was to
one.
showcase some of his talent on his roster. And one of the songs that came out of that whole movie and soundtrack was El DeBarge, Rhythm of the Night. I mean, that song will forever be tied to that movie, but it stands on its own as a song that a lot of people know and remember. But the action in that movie is just silly at this point. But at the time, I just remember him being sort of kind of like this black superhero because he had these powers and abilities. And that's what I remember watching this movie in the theater. And then you're watching it and it goes along and it's all kind of like normal in a sense. And then all of a sudden, Shogun, when they're in that final battle, he's got his hands back and they start glowing red. And you're like, what? He's got like powers. And then Bruce Leroy realizes that he's the master and he has the glow. And then they start battling and everything. You're just like, man, this became something altogether different. So it was most definitely this over the top movie. But love that movie for sure.
That's a good one. It's so over the top and so good. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, Jascha, your number three action film. 80s
My
action
number
film.
three. I'm actually gonna have to mirror somebody on this list already, and that is The Predator. Definitely wanted to put Arnold up there. That movie right there, like you, Michelle, that skinning and hanging them from the tree scene, like that messes up. Well, that sticks with a little kid, man. There's really
It
no reason in the
does.
world why you keep watching with that shit. But
That messed me
it was
up.
it was definitely dark. It was definitely one of the things that was a little messed up. But yeah, that's pretty much where I'm going with that.
All right, Michelle, you're taking us to number two. Number two, 80s action film.
And I feel like I premised before I started this list, like mine's not too over the toppy because I didn't see a lot of over the top gratuitous 80s action films. Like I never saw Bloodsport, which I'm sure you guys are gonna be like, oh, Bloodsport, but I never saw that one, and I think I saw Last Blood like once ever, so I'm not that familiar with some of the really like heavy hitters here, at least in that context. But for me, my number two is also The Terminator. That film was, I remember seeing that film for the first time and going like, what is happening in the future? Like for me, that just blew my mind that we have, robots coming back and that they are, I guess when I was a kid, my head was like, robots are good. And then it's like, oh, wow, robots will kill you. And robots will kill you in a very violent way. And they will just literally shoot you with a huge shotgun. And I just remember being so amazed by the whole situation. No, that movie is, it's obviously it's like a major classic as far as action films go, as far as sci-fi goes. But no, there's some over the top kill shots in that one that are like, whoa, we didn't need to. Okay, Arnold's just gonna shoot everybody and kill everybody with a shotgun. Okay, that's what's happening. Cool. That's fine. No, yeah, but Terminator, like, God, classic '80s action films, spectacular. That's all I need to say.
That's all you got to say.
That's
for
all
the
I gotta
Terminator.
say about the Terminator.
You're number 2. All right. So then my number 2 is taking us to, what is it? 1988, I believe. As I see Michelle looking over your list.
Oh!
Wow.
Wow.
I know what it is. This is epic right here.
This is epic.
I'm amazed that this is your number 2. Honestly,
Well,
I'm a little sad.
I'll say this.
A little disappointed.
It's so, we talk about our lists and what makes certain movies, and kind of like you touched on, Bobby, I feel like I'm a mixture of like some stuff that's not, it's over the top, but it's also big budget, they've become super big films versus just crazy over the top kind of stuff. And then there's a reason, like, I guess in a way my number 1 is where it is because it better fits kind of the overall theme we're going for. Plus I just purely love that movie.
Okay.
I think I know what your number 1 is.
Number 2, I definitely
I know what the number 2 is.
Number 2, I definitely very much love.
Oh, yeah.
Purely love this movie as well, but it doesn't quite fit the. I don't know what. I guess it kind of does. I don't know.
I mean, it could fit a whole nother category technically.
It could, and my number 2 is as I try to get my graphic going here. My number 2 is Die Hard.
Oh. The best Christmas movie.
The best movie that is now like always debated, is this a Christmas movie or not? And even though I don't necessarily fall into the camp of, oh, this is a Christmas movie, I do watch it at Christmas. So there's that.
Tradition now.
It's just a great movie. I remember seeing this in a movie theater in '88, and I guess at 10 years old, I just remember that experience in a movie theater, sitting through this, just felt like, man, this is special. I don't know what it was about it. And this movie is special. It's just incredibly good. And
You saw this in theater.
I saw this in the theater. I remember what theater I saw it at. Like, it stuck. I remember walking out of the theater after. Like, I remember the exit we used, and just, I don't know. It's like fresh.
Wow.
Yeah, no. Die Hard is a movie I really love. I guess I love my number 1 movie a little more, I guess. But
Bruce.
But Die Hard is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. That's why it's in my number 2. I feel like I'm disappointing you that it's not my number 1. So
It's so good.
it is so good. That's
If
why it's
your
in my number
1
2.
is what I think it is. I think and based on how you made your list, I can see why your number 1 would be what it is, if I'm guessing right. But we'll see.
I'm curious. I fear. I guess I don't know. I'm curious if you're guessing correctly.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my list that I've written up, and I'm like,
Yeah. All right, Bobby, you're number 2.
My number 2 has already been said, so I won't really go too much into it other than just to really kind of say it. And what I think is funny about it is my number 2 is Running Man. And the reason why that one is a lot of the reasons why David said and what makes that so over the top is the aspect of it being this sort of game show aspect. And then the fact that for anyone that's old enough like myself to remember, they'll know that the host of the game show in the movie was Richard Dawson, who used to host Family Feud back in the day before any time that Steve Harvey did it. So people would remember him as a game show host. And so for him being in the movie as this host of this deadly game, it was just perfect, really, in that sense. And it's just so over the top, and I can't help but love it. And I haven't seen it for a while myself either, but yeah, I would love to revisit it sometime because it's pretty awesome.
I remember some of the kill sequences in that one just being kind of over the top and gratuitous for no reason. Like,
Yeah.
like whoa, this is man. And I mean, Arnold would really have to get dirty to win a segment, and like other players would have to. Oh God, it was rough. Some of those things were rough, man. And yeah, it does kind of take it up a notch that the dude that used to host the Family Feud is now hosting this like death game. Like that takes it up a notch of like, this is messed up. Anyways.
All right, Jascha, you're number 2.
My number 2 has already been said as well. I mean, there's only a certain amount of these that we can get through, so I don't need to dive too much more into this. I recently just rewatched this movie maybe about 2 months ago when the quarantine first started happening, and that is Die Hard. Gotta love it. That Christmas movie is so classic. It is just a fantastic, fantastic film. I still laugh at some of the scenes. Come to the coast, we'll have a few drinks and get together. Like all that stuff. Love it all. So Die Hard is my number 2.
All right, Michelle, start off our number 1s.
All right.
shall
Well, I mean, I'm a little sad because this is my number 1, and apparently it might not be good enough for number 1 because it seems to be everybody's number 2, but that's 1988's Die Hard. For me, this movie it's a classic description of 1980s action film for me. Like it has thrilling things that happen. You got a dude crawling through air vents trying to figure out how to maneuver through a building and then kill people and not die. Like it's so good. There's explosions for absolutely no reason in like stairwells and stuff. Like, why is this not a spectacular number 1 for everybody? I don't understand.
Wow.
People get like there's kill sequences that just don't even need to happen, and that's okay in this movie. It's what makes that movie great. I mean, and then the ending. God, the ending is so good, you know? I mean, not only does the man fall from I don't even know how many stories up, but there's explosions below him engulfing. It's come on. 1980s action movie, like definitive, is Die Hard. Love it. Could watch it over and over. Watch it every Christmas.
Die Hard, you're number 1. My number 2. Yasha's number 2. Bobby, it sounded like you wanted to chime in. Or did
No,
I
not about
mishear?
the list. I was just gonna say about yours.
About mine.
You're number 1.
Yeah.
Oh, he's
I'll
guessing
just
already.
say the year, just a guess.
Okay.
And if it's not in the year, then I got it wrong.
I'm ready.
But did your movie come out in 1980?
1980?
Ooh.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
No.
Oh.
And of course, I'm going to start to wonder, there's probably a lot of stuff I'm just forgetting. Like when I, sat down to put together this list, I'd be curious to hear some other honorable mentions or maybe what you're predicting that might not be it. Maybe I'm like, oh, wait, no, that is fantastic. When I totally forgot about it. I don't know.
Is it 82?
No, it's not.
Oh, I have no idea this is now.
It's not. I'm going to double check myself, make sure I'm not crazy on this year. But I know it's not 82. But okay. But before I say it, I wanted to make sure I'm not wrong about the year. The year is going back to that great year of 87.
Wow, another 87.
I had 3 87s on my list.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. 3 87s, an 84, and an 88. But yeah, my number 1 has been listed already a couple times, at least. I think it was just twice. And this is a movie that brings me back to Schwarzenegger, and that is Predator. I really, really like this movie. I think it works too. It's such a, in a way, it's such a simple idea. It's over the top, and the kills in this are over the top, but it's also, the movie is quiet at times, and it's got a very simple concept about it, but it's got that futuristic aspect, sci-fi aspect to it that I loved as a kid. The funny thing is about this list too, and this was in 87. I was 9 at that point. you know, my parents let me watch a lot of stuff, but I remember I had really wanted to see this when it was getting ready to come out, and my mom watched it on video or something first. Like, I didn't get to see a lot of these in the theater, but I remember my mom, we rented it, and she watched it before I did, and she was like, okay, I'm going to let you watch this, but there's going to be times in the movie I'm going to tell you to, like, close your eyes or, you know, to turn away. So the first time or two that I watched it, that's how I experienced it. I missed all these little spots.
Oh, gosh.
And then
You missed the terror.
And then it wasn't long after. I wish I could remember how soon it was. It probably was even within like months or something that I finally watched it and saw the whole thing. And I remember my 9 or at that point maybe 10-year-old self going, oh, that's what I cover my eyes for? Come on. Like oh, skin people hanging from the guy with the big hole in his body after he got shot. That's nothing. Like, I was, based on her reaction, I was expecting like, man, this is some crazy shit in this movie. Like, she's telling me to close my eyes. I mean, she has let me watch some crazy stuff before. Why is she like covering this up? This must be nuts. And it was, don't get me wrong, it's pretty gory, but it wasn't that nuts. I don't know. I really love Predator. I think it's a great movie. It's too bad that the franchise kind of was crap after that. And then, you know, what they tried to do with the Alien versus Predator and everything. Yeah. I say that, and at the same time, I think this just it could have just been a good example of a great movie, and I wish we could have been one and done, and that we had never seen Predator again, you know? And maybe not get a sequel until now when it could have been a really good sequel or something like that. But you know, I just really like this movie, and Die Hard is definitely huge for me as well. But I guess Predator has a more special spot in my heart.
Predator just inches it out in your heart. I get that.
So yeah, Predator is my number one. All right, Bobby, your number one.
My number one is a movie I'm pretty sure most people, maybe yourselves included, have never even heard of. Let alone watched it. And I gotta tell you, this movie, I watched it so many times on HBO. It's so ridiculous. And it was definitely when I was in my kung fu ninja type phase of my life and loved those type of movies. And this movie had no business being really for any reason. But yet it exists, and I do love it because there's some just outrageous stuff going on in this movie. And my number one movie is called, from 1985, Gymkata. And I'll spell that for you, David.
Oh, thanks.
It's not.
That'd be helpful.
It's a weird movie. It's Gymkata. And it stars an Olympic gold medalist named Kurt Thomas, who just recently passed. And the whole idea is that he's this guy who is going to this foreign country to compete in this game, this contest that no one who has come from outside of that country has ever won. And it's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. There's this one point in time in the movie when, because he's a gold medalist, and you'll have to look it up on YouTube. I guarantee it's on YouTube. There's a scene where, because he's a gold medalist, they had to put something in there that I guess went to his skill level in terms of fighting. And so in the middle of this town, I think it's called Town of the Crazies, and there's all these weird people in this town, and they start coming to attack him from all these different angles. And in the middle of the town, for some reason, he finds some sort of thing that looks like a pommel horse. So he grabs onto the pommel horse and he's swinging his legs around and knocking people over and doing like an Olympic kind of like figure dance or whatever with the pommel horse and just knocking people out left and right with it. And it's just so ridiculous. But it's one of those types of movies that, because it was so dumb and over the top at the time and I realized it, I just ate it up like candy. So that's my number one, and I know no one's ever heard of it.
I had to put that poster up because I'm like, I've never heard of that.
I've never heard of it.
This poster is amazing.
This poster is amazing.
That poster is so magical. That is so 80s.
There's a lot of beauty happening right now.
Like gorgeous.
Even the symmetry of it's really good. Like, it's really a good poster.
Yeah, I don't even know. Yeah, this is definitely one of those over the top ones. I don't know why this is. Wow, how this
That's
got made.
good, man. Bobby for the win here so
Hot out.
far. We just got one more to
One
go.
out
But
I
man,
definitely
damn,
have never heard of.
That's a good one.
All right, Jascha. Finish
Bring
it
it
off.
home.
Bring it home. You're number one.
You know what? I had my number one, but Bobby saying something triggered a memory for something that I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I forgot about this one movie. But I'm still going to stick with my number one that I originally wanted to do. And that is just all kinds of awesomeness. And it's already been played out there. And Bobby already said it. And it's just one of the lines is, I thought you'd be bigger. I'm talking about Roadhouse, baby. That is my number one. Over the top. Just like Bobby said, it's like, here's Patrick Swayze coming off of Dirty Dancing, being the bad boy Dirty Dancer, and here he is now kicking ass and taking names as a bouncer and rips a guy's throat out at the end of the movie. But that's cool. Like, everything's okay after that. Like,
Totally normal.
you don't get much more over the top than that. And that right there to me was like the quintessential 1980s movie. But listening to him talk, it triggered a memory of one of the other movies that I wanted to mention. But I'm sticking with my list, and I'm going with Roadhouse.
Nice. Well, there's our top fives. I'm curious to know what your guess really quick. What did you think my number one was?
Sorry. Yes.
Go ahead.
I thought maybe because you've talked about the movie before, and I think we share a mutual love for it, or maybe that's something I made up in my head. But I thought your number one was going to be Flash Gordon.
Oh. And see, that's a big movie for me, but I guess I think of it more like a comic book sci-fi film than I do like an action film. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's why I didn't even consider it. So.
That's fair. Yeah. I think of it as action, but it's definitely that over the top just by concept.
Oh, I mean, it's definitely over the top for sure.
Was that 1980 or 79?
It said 80 on IMDb, but maybe
I thought it was 79 too.
I'm old.
Yeah. I mean, a quick Google, I'm seeing 80 as well. But
okay.
Yeah, it was released on December 5th, 1980.
So, Jascha, what was the other one you were thinking about putting up there?
Oh, anyone that watches 80s movies is definitely. I saw this in the theater. Had no business seeing it in the theater. I saw it in the theater with my dad for no reason. But I'm talking about The Golden Child.
Eddie
Murphy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the guy literally goes up against the devil and wins. Okay, like with a knife, and it's so like ridiculous and so over the top. And when I was thinking, I was like, oh my God, how did I not manage to put that on my list? And I mean, I can still probably watch that movie because there's so many fantastic one-lines through that film. It's funny. It's just great. So that's, Eddie dancing around the idea of being in an action film and The Golden Child being it. So hey, that was it. That was my honorable mention, if you will.
I mean, yeah, we've gone over way long, but are there any honorable mentions really quick? Some of you guys just have to list.
I'll run through mine real quick. So I also had Aliens, and I had RoboCop also listed as my other ones. And I had Last Dragon on there too, because I remember that being just ridiculousness. I remember nights when I was younger and waking up randomly like 4 a.m. and finding it on TV and watching it until the sun came up. Mm-hmm. Anyways, the other ones that are on mentions is First Blood. I mean, hello, it's the first Rambo, 1982. Guys, Stallone. This is classic. And then I had some other ones that you might not want to say. I don't think they are fitting quite with our definition of over the top 1980s action movies, but for me, they are still 80s action movies, and that is Lethal Weapon and Beverly Hills Cop. I stupid love those movies. They're really good
Mhm.
action movies of the 80s for sure. I just don't think they
Yep.
quite fit the over the top level that we were kind of going for as far as like violence maybe. But for an 80s action film, I think those are pretty classic.
Bobby, it sounded like
Yeah.
you had some that you wanted to mention.
Yeah, and again, just sort of to echo and jump on what Michelle was saying, I agree with some of those that she mentioned, and I would also add another Eddie Murphy movie into that mix, which is 48 Hours with Nick
Yep.
Nolte. That's another
That's a good one too.
great
That's a
action
good
movie
one
back in the day.
for sure.
But the rest of my over the top list is, let's see here, I got I did mention Flash Gordon, I did Go and Cash,
Tango
Master.
Oh, man.
Remo Williams. I don't know if anyone ever saw that movie, and The Toxic Avenger. That
Oh,
movie is very
you know,
over
I
the
thought
top.
about that. Oh, I actually did think about that because it was so weird and so like
Yeah, it's very
it's such a
it's
like
so
a D-list film, but
yeah,
it's
trauma.
Right.
Man, that bad boy's been in. It's yeah, it's a weird one.
Yeah.
Yasha, any other last ones you wanted to bring up?
No, I
You
don't have
covered
too many
everything?
other. Yeah, I don't have too many other honorable mentions. I mean, I have the Terminator down, but that is what it is. That movie's just badass. You know, that movie right there. It's just an amazing story in itself. So I don't really need to dive too much into anything else. I think my biggest honorable mention was The Golden Child. Like I said, the guy literally goes up against the devil with a knife and wins, or a demon, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I'll just say I had mentioned at the top of my list that I had 6 written down, and then as I really kind of we were really digging into the over the top idea of this list, it was easy to pick the one to kick off my list because it's definitely not over the top, and I saw it on a lot of action like top 5 or top 10, top 20 lists. And I was kind of torn at first. That's why I threw it on there just in case, because I love this movie, but it's Top Gun. But
Oh, yeah.
but
That's an
it's an action film.
That's an
but,
80s action film, but I think we were going more towards
right,
80s action violence,
kind of,
kind of.
Kind of.
yeah.
Yeah, I
So
would
that's why it was easy to go. Yeah, that's not going to be on my 5. I'll whittle it down to these other 5 instead. So
But still, classic 80s action for sure.
oh, for sure, and I love that movie, but yeah, not really fitting for the kind of list we were going for here.
Yeah.
With that, we have gone on, I think,
Way over.
long enough. So we are going to wrap things up and get out of here. As always, we'd love to hear back from everyone listening and watching. If you're watching us here on YouTube, just make sure to leave us a comment down below. As I mentioned at the top of the show, make sure to like and subscribe by hitting that thumbs up button and subscribe button down below. Also, hit that bell icon to be notified when we go live in the future or add any other videos for that matter. And you can find us on Twitter and Instagram as well at flicker_effect. And make sure to go to the website, flickereffect.com. You can find everything in there. We're all around. With that, I am David Lott.
I'm Bobby Jackson.
I'm Yasha Wilson.
I'm Michelle Hillard.
Thanks for listening and watching.